All right, everybody, welcome back to an episode of FAPA Talk. Tim Genc here, and excited to be joined by Brian Coulter, who's the Executive Vice President of Fleet Operations for Volato. Brian, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Tim, thank you. My pleasure. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got into aviation.
Well, from my strange accent, you can tell I wasn't originally from the US. And yes, last weekend was my country was in national mourning because the All Blacks failed to win the Rugby World Cup. So I'm from New Zealand. Rugby is integral to almost everything that happens in there, much like American football is here. But I started early, went straight into the military out of high school. You're allowed to do that where we came from. So I've been flying for about 44 years now. And always like to be in the innovative side of aviation, whether it was military or later into the civilian world. Did a mixture of airplanes in the military, Royal New Zealand Air Force, helicopters, jets, training airplanes, flew a season in the formation aerobatic team. Introduced some cool technology, which was cool for us, very mundane these days with the night vision goggle program. Wrote that into our Air Force, which didn't exist at the time. So I've always liked the what comes next, who's got the best ideas, how does that work? I came over to the US, was fortunate to be able to come and work here and started flying light freight, and after a 16-year Air Force career, I was thinking I was doing pretty good. And then I was in a Cessna 310 beating up and down the west coast of the US at night with all kinds of things like loads of mice and other things in the back of my 310 in the winter storms, going like, I think I might, I'm not sure whether I'm on the right path. But one thing led to another. Got involved with some people that were innovative and starting airlines, and it turns out that that was kind of my jam. I like that as much as flying to a point, and got hooked up with the group that eventually started JetBlue. So that was one of my accomplishments, being on the ground floor there, and I was the third person in the office, and it was a very empty space, which by the end of I think 18 months later, we had, 12 months later, we had 1,000 people, and not long after that, we had 10,000. So it was, amazing growth, and the Airbus was a great machine, and fly-by-wire was sort of still new to a lot of people, so it was great. And then one of the people that was starting JetBlue said, "Hey, I've got another thing that I want to start," and that was in more in the charter and private aviation side of things. And I said, "Well, that would be something that I haven't done, so let's go do that." So we started Jet Suite. We actually started 3 certificates as part of that. One of them is JSX, which is still going now, so very much in the news. So very happy that all of my colleagues are still pulling for that one, and then got an opportunity to start with Volato just a few months ago. Innovative company. It has leadership that has a lot of experience in software and a broad range of industries, which is actually a refresh from a lot of initial leadership in aviation companies that tend to be strictly aviation, and they tend to ask the same questions, and you end up with the same answers. So once again, on the innovation theme, having a group of people that are smart and come from a slightly different mind space, very much commercial mind space, but a slightly different mind space from traditional aviation means we've come up with some innovative products, and it's been a great ride so far.
It's been quite a ride so far. You've done a little bit of everything. That is
Yeah,
awesome.
hopefully I'm the master of something after all that.
There was a gentleman that I recruited when I was still at the airlines that he was 62 years old and he wanted to become an airline pilot. And I said, "Well, why?" He said, "Because when I die, I want my epitaph to read from A to Z, but no PhD." So it's like, all right.
Ooh,
So
yes, yes, yes.
yeah, enjoyed his time with the airline. So well, thank you for that background on you. Tell me a little bit about Volato. You've talked about them kind of being on the front end and being innovative. What do they do? What regulation do they operate under? Tell us about their fleet. Who is Volato?
So yeah, Volato is also broad and does a number of things. We have a managed aircraft fleet that's based out in Houston. About 8 airplanes, I think, right now. Managed fleets tend to rotate a little bit. King Airs. We've got a Hawker, Sovereign, Citation Bravo, and a Challenger. The primary fleet is a floating fleet, as we would call it. So no fixed base as such. They're too busy to be at a fixed base of Honda jets. And we have 21 of those. Number 21 got added, I think, last night. So we are in the process of growing. We have 2 more new out of the factory coming in December, and slated for 11 new aircraft of the Honda Jet next year. We have also new from Gulfstream. We have 4 G280s on order for next year. So we will have a mid-sized product, and that will also be treated as a floating aircraft. Obviously, much longer range, slightly different market segment, but is a very capable airplane. Quiet, fast, does all the things that we would want it to do. As far as the business is concerned, we do pretty much we cover a broad brush. We are fundamentally a fractional program, although we do not operate under Part 91K. If anybody wants to research the difference, we can still sell a fraction and operate under Part 135. So all our flights are under Part 135. We have a insider program, as we call it, which is like a traditional jet card program. We sell retail on the charter market. We sell wholesale to brokers on that market. We market our own empty legs, which a lot of people do. And we have just launched a new innovative company called Vaunt, which is aiming to aggregate those empty legs, and for a fixed fee, you can bid on and get as many empty legs a year as you possibly can go to. The app's pretty simple. You put your details in, and it'll tell you when there is an empty leg somewhere near you, and if you want to go there, you can just go there. So
Wow.
we think Vaught's going to be pretty disruptive. We like it. It already has over 1,000 people are in, and we expect it to be very, very broad. So fractions, empties, Vaunt as a specific industry disruptor. We do a lot with that fleet.
Yes, it sounds like you do. You mentioned that your fleet is kind of floating around, so there's not necessarily any bases for the aircraft necessarily.
Correct. We have a maintenance. I'll use a JetBlue term, focus city. So not really a hub, or not really anything else, but we have a focus in Houston, and we have at Hobby, and a focus in St. Augustine in South Florida, or actually North Florida. And we have hangars at both of those locations, and we have permanent maintenance staff there. The remainder of everybody else in the company was started essentially 2 years ago in the middle of COVID. The company is almost entirely virtual, And while we now get to share each other company occasionally, we actually kind of like the virtual space for what we are doing. I
Hmm.
advocated for a long time that the only way ops center, can work is you've got to have the huge screen in the background so that people can see the big screen, and then a bunch of people sitting around in little clusters, talking to each other about how airplanes move. But it turns out you can very successfully, very clearly, and very safely move airplanes with people who are working virtually. So that's actually been a great insight for me after you get a lot of experience at doing these things, and all of a sudden you figure out there's a whole other way of doing it, and you thought it wouldn't work, and it actually works really, really well. So the original founders did an excellent job of starting that. So that all of those aircraft that operate under that system are where they spend the night wherever they're at. If they spend a little more time than forecast, then we hangar them wherever they happen to be. But otherwise, on normal overnights, they arrive in the afternoon, leave in the morning, and they are spread over the country. More so 60-40 east versus west.
Okay, so then your pilots are also virtually based. You're a pilot working for you guys can live wherever they want.
Yep. They are, I think the industry calls it home basing. So everybody's home based. You've got to get to you've got to be able to get to your local airport, but from your local airport, we match you to whichever aircraft you're going to be in that rotation. Rotations are along the lines of week on, week off, 8 and 6. So 8 on, 6 off. There's a changeover day in the middle, and it's a managed schedule and something that in advance and well in advance. So it's good for quality of life and good for good for home life, and you're never away too long.
So that 8 and 6 kind of perpetuates throughout the year. It's always 8-6, 8-6. So someone in February reasonably knows that they are not working for Thanksgiving.
Yep, and they know whether they're which side of Christmas to sort of stagger the family on. If they don't quite get Christmas off, obviously we fly people to their families. So yes, holidays we would all like to be at home. And actually, holidays is when most of the people that we consider working in the office, although they're virtually in the office, all of those that are qualified go out and help help our pilots that are out on the line to try and get a few more home so they can have some extra quality time at Christmas. So I think we've got seven people from the office donating time on the holidays to try and make sure that people have a good quality of life. And Volato is a great. It seems odd in a virtual world, but has created a great family-like atmosphere. Very safety forward and very safety conscious, and that's part of the language on a daily basis, which is great.
Absolutely. I mean, from the quality of life, from the family feel, company culture, and all of that, what are some of the other reasons that somebody would choose the Volato route over whether it's another charter carrier or the airline route?
Yeah, there's a couple of different places that we fit in a pilot's I call it pilot's life cycle. So we prefer people to have 1,000 hours to start, and we have a number already that have started at 1,000 hours and have got through to their ATP. And have achieved the company minimums. Our internal company minimum is 2,000 hours to upgrade. That's insurance requirement. But we've had I think 10 or 11 now that have gone through and done their ATP, and they have remained with us and haven't gone somewhere yet. It would be most natural for people to come and work at that for a couple of hours, and with an ATP, start looking. We've been very fortunate. People like who we are, who they fly with. The Honda Jet is it's a sophisticated. It's small, but it's sophisticated, and a lot of automation. Great for the technically minded, and does a very, very nice job. And so once you get past that 50 to 2,000 hours, we've upgraded internally a few people. They have so far stayed because that's about where they are in that. So how long they stay, we don't know. So we've had limited turnover. But there is for the folks that are at the retiring out of the airlines, that's also to if people feel like they have a few more years in in aviation and want to keep and keep their hand in, we have it's a good spot for that. And certainly they're talking about an age limit for Part 135, but at the moment there is not an upper tier. And then probably more importantly are the quality of life choices that people make. Airlines are great places. Obviously I've been in them. I've flown in a few thousand hours sitting in the left seat and driving the bus around. And it has its own appeal, and it has its own predictability. But it has a lot less direct interaction with committing aviation. You have a dispatcher that's jointly responsible, but provides a lot of the information. You appear to be a checker more than a doer. People that like aviation actually like flying, actually like interacting with people, actually like knowing who's in the back of the jet, actually like knowing that they actually made a difference. There's definitely a quality of life choice for this style of aviation over the airlines. They both have their ups, they both have their downs. But it is a different job. It's a different mindset. You can kind of walk out the cockpit door and just turn to the right when you leave the big jet. Here, you're making sure the airplane's clean, that it's stocked. You're making sure that maintenance stuff is completed. Not doing it, but make sure that it's completed. You're making sure that the post-flight is as good as your pre-flight, so that we know what happens with the aircraft the next morning. All of the kinds of things that you would do if you were running your own aircraft. Well, that's kind of how we run it. So we don't have teams and teams of people at every station that you visit. So it's a different life, but it's an interesting one. And small factoid: if you were to fly with Southwest Airlines, maximum number of airports you could go to is 121. They only have 121 destinations. And of those, reasonably, you would do maybe 15 to 20% a year. So maybe you get 25, 30 airports that you would visit. Last 12 months, we've been to 719 different airports. Wow. Out of a total of about 1,153 that we have been to in the last 2 years. So, variety of life, variety of destination, challenges in flying, a lot of smaller airfields, a lot of pieces of aviation that you just don't touch when you're at a major airline. So that's kind of that quality of life, and that being surrounded by all of the parts of aviation is what appeals to a lot of people. Appeals to me. That's why I like organizing, and we've got a great team of leaders that work for me in the company, and I love watching them go to work. They're a good team.
Awesome. A lot of adventure. I've seen the Living in the Age of Airplanes movie narrated by Harrison Ford so many times. And it often talks about the fact that how aviation united the country, united the world, it connected the world, that every airport is a time machine to somewhere else, that it takes you kind of everywhere. Neat that, and yet I don't think a lot of people think about that. You go to some of the major carriers, it's going to be a very limited number of places you see, versus you're talking about what you're doing, going to places that you would never, ever go out and go. And there's an adventure to that. And that's something neat and exciting.
And you're not going to be pulling up to a self-serve pump in your jet at Southwest. There's going to be a scurrying of people as magically fuel goes on and bags go off, and you spend most of your time typing the next route into the FMS and wondering what you have for lunch. It's just a different mindset. It's a different execution, but no, it's a lot of fun.
Well, for those that are listening to this or viewing this and really like everything you're saying, how would they go ahead and get in touch with your team? How would they go ahead and start an application? What would be the best ways for them to go ahead and do that?
Very simple, basically a single point of contact, flyvolato.com, FLYVOLATO.com. Flyvolato.com, there's a careers button, go there. I know what the next question is are you hiring? And we are just opening up the taps right now on hiring. Within the next 2 weeks, the pilot hiring will be open. We have slots open for December. And based on the airplane deliveries, as far as we're concerned, we have slots from December continuing because we're on a growth trajectory and we need good help. So it may well open within the next week, but it will not be long.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's good to hear. Really appreciate all the information, Brian. Let's go ahead and close with a couple fun ones. Obviously, when you're interviewing pilots, they come in all different shapes and sizes, and there are things that sometimes us in the recruiting world experience that it's hard to go ahead and explain that to anybody else. What would be your strangest, craziest, or even most memorable interview or recruiting story?
That would probably come from the round of interviews we did when we were starting JetBlue. So JetBlue now is kind of, it's a major airline and everybody knows it, and it's a part of your daily choice of how you move. At the time, obviously, no one knew about it other than it was a good idea, and David Neilman had some presence in the market. But we were interviewing a vast array of people who had had a reasonable idea that this might be a good thing, but they were all very new. And I think I did 110 interviews in the first month. We had to get a lot of people. We're talking 12 pilots per airplane. We're going to have 10 airplanes in the first year. You got to go through a lot of interviews to get there. So the pace was one thing, but probably one of the questions was along the lines, what have you done in the past to help move an airplane and to make sure that the schedule was met? One of those kinds of questions you get in an interview. And one of the applicants said, well, it turned out we ended up leaving the gate he was flying a 737. We ended up leaving the gate with the paperwork on board, and we needed the paperwork off. We had already taxied, and we were a long way away. If we had to turn around and go back, it was another 20 minutes. Then you got to hook up the gate. We're going to do all this other stuff. So, as he's told it, I came up with the bright idea. We'll just pass we'll pass the paper out the window. And I'm thinking, okay, we're out on the active taxiway. This is where it starts getting an active taxiway, and the engines are running. Yeah, the engines are running. And so what happened? I said, well, I was thinking safety. I'm like, okay, this is kind of like thinking safety, but we've got a different view of safety already. I was thinking safety, so I didn't want anything to get sucked into the engine. So I made sure that I used my headset that had a clip that went onto my shirt. I used the clip on the headset cord around the paperwork and opened the side window in the 737 and lowered the paperwork out to the guy that was on the tug who had driven around the front of the airplane so that he could grab it, and then it was secure, and that was a nice, safe way of making the airplane move. And I was like, there are so many things I do not like about that story. I can't even tell you where to start. I appreciate that you like to make airplanes move, but you are not for us. We did. I can tell you, we definitely did not hire that particular guy. So some people tell you some people will tell you all kinds of stuff in an interview, as I'm sure you already know, given that you do this probably.
Yes, yes. I've been working with a couple candidates, preparing them for interviews. And again, part of the reason is, hey, tell me a story and let's see, is this a story you should tell or a story you shouldn't tell? And sometimes the story they tell, they're amusing and it's fantastic. And it's like, I appreciate you brightening my day. Please do not tell that one in interview. There are elements
Okay.
of that that are just very problematic. So. All
Yeah.
right. Last question I have for you. What's your favorite aircraft? It could have been one you flew, not flew, fictional. You could tell me about Star Trek, whatever it ends up being. Your favorite thing that flies.
So I get, I cut my teeth in helicopters in the military. We did ran search and rescue in the mountains in the South Island in New Zealand, and we had the UH-1H Huey. Most people now would kind of see them on old Vietnam movies or something, that kind of footage. It was just an amazing, reliable aircraft that had all kinds of limitations, but that just kind of made it the thing that you were always in touch with, because you had to be in touch with it. Otherwise, it had all these vices that would come and bite you. But I took that all over the Pacific, took it to Antarctica, took it to New Guinea, across Australia, and obviously all through New Zealand and the rescues off the sides of mountains. So we did a lot with that machine. It took me a lot of places. And I took it to England and competed in an international helicopter competition over there.
Wow.
Even even won a trophy. So what do you know?
That's
So
awesome.
The Huey would be my favorite airplane.
Okay, perfect. Well, Brian, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to go ahead and toss out there for anybody watching and trying to go ahead and figure out the best place for them to go ahead and land their career?
Aviation is the one of those connective tissues that runs through life, especially in the U.S. I think you can't draw a 100-mile circle in the East Coast without turning up something like 257 airports in any circle. It's a ridiculous number of airports, and aviation is a large part of it. The industry is relatively open right now. For a lot of years, it was seemingly closed to only those that are on a privileged track or had some kind of in with somewhere else. The industry is open. There's a lot of opportunity, and whether it's a Volato or whether it's a major airline, and whether you just love aviation, it's a good time. It's a good time to be flying. It's a safe time to be flying, and I encourage anybody who's halfway thinking about it to just get out and do it, and we'll all have some fun.
Awesome. All right, Brian, thank you so much for your time today, sir. I really appreciate it. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing everybody soon.